Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Jeff Rains coming to you again with Foundation of Civilizations. Please like, share, and subscribe. Let me know how things are going. I apologize I'm getting this out late this week. I've actually had a, great time this past week spending with family and really enjoyed hanging out with them and helping them make some moves. So we've had a lot of things go on this past week. A lot of interesting things, a lot of dangerous things. To get started on the markets, oil, West Texas, crude was down to 69.84. Brent was at 73.20. The OPEC basket was at 72.22. Gold was down to 60 or 26.15.96. Silver was down to 29.69. The Baltic Exchange Dry Goods Index was down to 989. The battle plans for Ukraine, including troop movements and dates, appeared online. U.S. military deployments. USS America is still in Sasebo, Japan. USS George Washington is still in Yokosuka, Japan. The USS Carl Vinson is in the Sulu Sea. And the USS Abraham Lincoln returned to its home port of San Diego, California. The USS George H.W.Bush returned to Norfolk, Virginia. And lastly, there are quite a few of the aircraft carriers that I do not have any information on this week, and so I'm not going to cover those. We'll get back to them next week and see where might we might be able to see where they are. But the last one I want to talk about is the USS Harry S. Truman, which is conducting operations in the Red Sea, and with it, in a not so friendly fire incident, a FA-18 from the Truman was shot down by the guided missile cruiser USS Gettysburg. Two pilots ejected safely, one had some unspecified injuries. Over in Europe, the DAX was down for the week to 19,641.81. FTSE was down to 8,084.61. The CAC 40 was down to 72.39.23. The IBEX was down to 11,409.30. The British economy was revised down again for the third quarter to show that there was no growth. The the United Kingdom is also wrestling with a spy scandal as a Chinese businessman has been unmasked as a spy. He had a close relationship with many of the royal family members, especially Prince Andrew and some high-ranking politicians. When I go through and I look at things, I tell you that things are changing in the world. These are some of the things that I see that are making significant changes that are important to watch. And this one is Russia and Iran have signed a deal to build a port in Iran. Russia struggles because they have very few warm water ports, and with Syria falling, they lost one of theirs, one that they like to use uh, on the Mediterranean Sea. This deal is a part of a bigger plan that will establish new trade routes that exclude Western intervention. It will increase or decrease shipping times to Mumbai by 40% and eliminate several bottlenecks. It will also avoid potential blocks by Western aligned ports and navies. It will enhance Russia's access to Middle Eastern markets and Iran's access to the Eurasian markets. However, the route's long-term viability will depend on overcoming several challenges, including infrastructure constraints, regulatory barriers, and political instability in the region. Furthermore, the success of the route will require significant investments in modernizing and maintaining transport infrastructure, ensuring security, and fostering a greater regional cooperation. Uh, as part of the Ukraine war, Russia's military chemical weapons chief was killed in Moscow by Ukraine security services. Russian economy seems to be doing very poorly as more sanctions are placed on Russia. Many of the banks, Russian banks, are struggling, and people are trying to withdraw their money. Those who can't get their money are taking matters into their own hands. Some of those who can't get their money taking matters into their own hands, and they're starting fires at the ATMs. Poland's Prime Minister, Donald Tusk, recognized Poland's precarious position as a front line and noted that Poland cannot give up everything to defend Ukraine, as in they can't give up all their military supplies and equipment. In in some kind of terror attack, a car drove through a busy market in Germany, killing many and injuring 235. Austria continues to levy new taxes on citizens that are struggling to pay for their basic commodities. They don't know how they're going to continue to pay for they're going to pay for the taxes either. As a war with Russia looms, many are disappointed with NATO countries' failure to reach the agreed defense spending levels. British Prime Minister failed to offer a timeline on when their spending would reach agreed upon levels, offering public finances are not in a good place in the United Kingdom. Leaders in the Netherlands are warning of potential terrorist attacks because young people are able to be easily radicalized online. The Asian markets, the Nikkei was down to 38,893.22. The SSE index was down to 3367.90. The Hang Seng index was down to 19,843.65. The BSE Sensex was down to 78,532.20. And the Nifty 50 was down to 23,744.40. In the Middle East, chaos is erupting in Syria as Turkish-backed rebels ended a ceasefire with Kurdish-led rebels, the Kurdish-led SDF. Concerns are growing among minority groups in Syria. Although the Assad regime was dangerous and dictatorial, they did respect minority groups' rights of Christians, Alawites, Kurds, and Muslims. Now, those minority groups are concerned about their security as Al Qaeda sets up a new government. Iran has several ships loaded with oil in China that they're looking to offload, looking to sell before the Trump administration takes office. The Houthi rebels struck targets in Israel and tried to strike several ships in the Red Sea. And the U.S. forces retaliated, destroying many Houthi targets. A decades long conflict hit a snag between Rwanda and Congo. Congo was ready to sign a peace deal, but they wanted to speak directly to the rebel group known as M23, which Congo claims is supported by Rwanda. But Rwanda failed to present the rebels in person, so Congo refused to sign the deal. As the world continues to drive towards electrifying, it demands more lithium to produce more batteries. More attention is being drawn to Nigeria, with many lithium mines being run illegally. And not enough attention is being brought to the fact that much of the work is being done by children. In an effort to address its involvement in slavery in the past, Benin is granting citizenship to any slave descendants that and that came from Benin. Africa has one of the highest birth rates in the world, but the education system continues to struggle. Many youth do not finish their formal education, and this has not helped in Uganda as parents struggle to pay school fees that change frequently. And this is just increasing the student problem, the education problem in Africa. In Mogadishu, Somali pirates seized a Chinese fishing vessel and demanded $10 million for the return of the boat and its 18 crew members. The American markets, the Dow Jones average was down to 42,622.42. The S&P was down to 59,31.19. and the Nasdaq was up to 19,647.81. Canadian ministers continue to resign. That furthers the idea that Prime Minister Justin Trudeau may be close behind them. The Canada seems to be struggling. The Canadian government seems to be struggling fairly well. The drone controversy continues in the Northeast and has expanded across the country. Other places in Washington, I believe in Tennessee. Some research has shown that these drones are operating in a corridor designated for drone research. The public is greatly concerned since the public representatives have shown they are willing to ignore threats and expose the public to dangers, as they did with the Chinese spy balloon. There is also I've seen some evidence that these drones may be working, searching for nuclear material, and the the government does not want people to be able to see the sensor package that they have, and they also do not want or those sensor packages function better as the sun goes down. Congress passed a continuing resolution after some controversy, narrowly avoiding a shutdown, but continuing to expand the deficit and the debt. Luckily, a 40% pay raise was stripped out of the vastly reduced spending bill. This was this was another time that a spending bill was passed at the last minute, despite having several months to prepare for the vote. Opponents did not like the 1,547 pages given to them at the last minute, and I don't blame them. Why in the world are we trying to pass uh, thousands of pages of spending and when people don't have time to read it? You couldn't finish the 1,500 pages in a week. You certainly can't digest it. I had a discussion with some workers this past week, and businesses are taking precautions to protect their stores and inventory and their personnel, their workers, by closing early if local police indicate that there's trouble in the area. The FBI says that your texts aren't secure, which is a great shock to me because, well, I thought everything was secure. Okay, yes, that is just sarcasm, and I have always assumed that my texts are being recorded and somebody's keeping a record of it and checking on it. In Wisconsin, 15-year-old girl opened fire at a private primary school, killing a young student and teacher before turning the gun on herself. In New York, the indictment of Luigi Mangione, the assassin of the United Healthcare CEO, has been upgraded to terrorism since his goal was to influence the public through violence or the threat of the use of violence. An Afghan national has been convicted in the United States for trafficking heroin into the country and providing the profits to the Taliban in Afghanistan. Haji Abdul Sattar Abdul Manaf was convicted after a 2 week trial back in August 2024, in which the jury found him guilty of attempting to smuggle heroin into New York to raise funds for known terrorist organizations. This is according to a statement made by the U.S. Department of Justice. Really not sure what he's thinking. It is the position of the United States to provide funds to terrorist organizations. This week, the Wall Street Journal has published an expose on how the staff of the current administration hid Joe Biden's decaying mental ability. They regularly limited his cabinet's access to him, shortened meetings, kept meetings focused. The This only furthers the question of who's really in charge in the United States, especially when those who are elected are directed what to do and say by someone who is not elected. Politicians they've got health problems after they get to be a certain age. They have certain limitations on them, especially depending on how well they or poorly they take care of themselves. And us as citizens should not have to suffer at the whims of a staff that refuses to address the health challenges faced by the politicians. I recently addressed a video on Nancy Pelosi, Mitch McConnell, Dianne Feinstein, and even John McCain. Uh, Nancy Pelosi fell recently and had to have emergency surgery. Mitch McConnell also fell and he was caught uh, just really spacing it out. He had no idea where he was or what he was doing. There comes a time when politicians need to retire. The John McCain, at towards the end of his life, he was struggling, having to deal with cancer treatments. Dianne Feinstein, in the worst case that I can tell, she had no idea where she was or what she was doing for the last couple of years of her life. Her staff were going out telling her to vote aye and to raise her hand or whatever the case may be. She was not. She was not coherent, and that is not how we run a country. That's not how anybody should be running a country. We're being scammed, and we need to step up and say enough is enough. Let's let some new people in there. Let them make decisions that are healthy and people that are going to be healthy for a while. These people, these politicians, they're towards the end of their life. They need to be resting. They need to be spending time with family and friends. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I want to wrap this up for this week. I hope that you guys are paying attention to what's going on and y'all are preparing for the challenges in the world, the changes in the world. And please like, share, and subscribe. And hope that you guys have a really wonderful week with the Christmas season. Thanks again. Much love to everybody. We will see you next time.